The cold was biting, sharp like tiny knives against her skin. Snow fell silently around the broken wreck of the shuttle. Smoke rose into the night sky, carrying the last warmth of the fire that had nearly taken her life. She couldn't feel her legs. She couldn't move. All she could do was breathe, and even that was getting harder. Her name was Vael. She was no ordinary alien woman. Vael was born into power, trained for command, but hated rules. She had defied her father, a high commander of the Arkan fleet. She believed the weak should be protected, not crushed. For that, she was labeled a rebel. And now, here she was, abandoned, broken, half-buried under her own ship. Her body shook from the cold. Her hands were covered in blood. One arm was pinned under a piece of metal. Her legs were a mess, bones snapped, nerves screaming, muscles torn. She had tried to drag herself out, but only managed to collapse a few feet away. No one came for her. She had heard the evacuation order. She had heard the panicked voices of her crew. She had even shouted for help. But they left her behind, left her, because she was difficult. Because she had challenged the wrong people. Because she wasn't worth the trouble. They thought she would die quietly, frozen and forgotten. But Vael was still breathing. Hours passed. Her vision blurred, her lips were cracked. The blizzard grew worse. Every few minutes she let out a weak sound, not a scream, not a cry, just enough to make her presence known, in case someone, anyone, was listening. Far above, in a nearby patrol ship, a young human medic named Ray scanned the area. He had no orders to land. He was only here to check for signs of survivors. Scanners showed nothing special, just wreckage, heat loss, dead metal. Weak signal. A broken transmission. Not enough to be an emergency beacon, but not noise either. Ray adjusted the receiver. The sound came again, a soft, rhythmic pulse. He narrowed his eyes. That wasn't random. That was breathing. Faint but steady. His team told him to ignore. It wrecks cold. No life signs. Move on. But Ray had been in war zones. He had seen what happened when people ignored the weak. He made a choice. He flew lower. Landing near the crash site, he stepped out into the snow with a thermal jacket and scanner in hand. The wind howled. Visibility was poor. But the moment he neared the wreckage, he felt something. Hope. A whisper reached him, carried by the wind, a voice, trembling, full of pain. Please. He ran toward it. The wreck was twisted metal, jagged edges, smoke still rising, and there under a collapsed wing, he found her. At first, he didn't believe she was alive. Her skin was turning pale. Her chest moved slowly. One eye was swollen. Shut. Her legs, he looked away for a second. They were completely shattered. She turned her head toward him. Her eyes locked with his, alien wounded, terrified, but still alive. Ray dropped to his knees beside her. I've got you, he said, even though she didn't understand his words. Gently, he cleared the snow from her face. Her breathing was shallow, but steady. He wrapped a thermal cloth around her body and activated a field heater beside her. She tried to speak again. Her voice cracked. Why? Are you here? Ray gave her a weak smile. Because you are. She blinked. Her own people had left her. A stranger from another world had found her. She didn't know if he was lying or if he was insane, but she knew one thing. She was no longer alone. Ray sent out a private signal, no response. His communicator buzzed. His commander was denying evac support. No confirmed valuable targets. Return immediately. He looked down at her. She was unconscious now, breathing, but fading fast. No, he whispered to himself. I'm not leaving her. He dragged out a med kit and started stabilizing her legs. It was crude splints, made of scrap metal, tied with wire, antiseptic foam covering the bleeding wounds. It wasn't enough, but it was something. Night fell deeper. The snow kept falling, and inside a small shelter made of canvas and courage, a human medic sat beside an alien rebel watching. Over her like a silent guardian, she wasn't supposed to survive. But fate had other plans. The storm was growing stronger. Ray didn't leave. Snow slammed against his temporary shelter, rattling the fabric like angry hands. Inside, The temperature was barely warm enough to keep her alive. The alien woman lay still, unconscious. Her breaths shallow and uneven. Her face was pale, her body shivering. Ray kept checking her pulse, weak but steady. He didn't know her name. He didn't even know her species. All he knew was that when she whispered through the cold, no one heard accept him. Back on the coms, his squad was mocking him. You really dragged a corpse into your tent? Probably a trick. These aliens fake distress calls all the time. HQ said move on. What's wrong with you, Ray? But he ignored them. Ray had been a soldier before he became a medic. He had seen people left behind too many times. Survived most didn't. He made himself a promise long ago. If he ever had the chance to save someone who everyone else ignored, he wouldn't walk away. He looked down at her again. Her chest rose slightly. Still alive. He adjusted the heating module, trying to push more warmth toward her core. Her legs were wrapped and splinted, but the bleeding hadn't fully stopped. He gave her a second dose of field anesthetic. It wouldn't heal her, but it would help her body fight. Suddenly, her hand twitched. Ray leaned in. She opened her eyes just barely. And this time, they weren't filled with fear. They were filled with confusion. You're still here? She whispered. I told you, he said softly. I've got you. She stared at him for a moment, then turned her head away. You're human. Yeah. Why? He knew what she meant. Why would a human save her? Why risk his career, his team, his own life for her? He didn't answer. Instead, he unsealed a protein pack and held it out. Try to eat. Just a little. She weakly turned her head back toward him and studied his face. In her world, humans were viewed as opportunists. Enemies, or at best, unpredictable outsiders. She had grown up hearing stories of human cruelty, how they conquered planets and bent laws to suit them. But now, here was one, kneeling beside her, sharing warmth, food, and silence. No questions. No threats, only care. Outside, the wind howled, like a beast hunting in the dark. Inside, she took a tiny sip from the ration tube. It burned her throat, but it kept her alive. What's your name? Ray asked gently. She hesitated. Vale. Vale, he repeated. Nice to meet you, I'm Ray. She closed her eyes as if trying to remember that name. Ray turned to his datapad. He began scanning for any nearby extraction ships, but the network was jammed by the storm. He sighed. No one was coming tonight. We'll wait till morning, he said out loud, mostly to himself. You rest, I'll watch. But she didn't sleep. Her voice broke the silence again. You shouldn't have come, I know. They'll come. Back, she said. Not for me, but for the wreck. If they see you with me, they'll kill you too. I'll take that chance. She turned her head again, more sharply this time. Her voice was hoarse, but her eyes were sharp. Why? Ray gave a tired smile. 'Cause I heard something others didn't. You. Vale's throat tightened. No one had ever said that to her. Not even her own kind. All her life she had shouted, protested, resisted, and been ignored. Her own squad had left her in the snow, but a human, a stranger, had heard her pain and answered. She stared at him. This time, with something more than fear, Ray adjusted the thermal blanket over her shoulders and leaned back against the wall of the tent. His weapon was close, just in case. But for now, he wasn't a soldier. He was her shield. She drifted into sleep again, slower this time. Warmer than before, and in that stormy night, a bond began to grow not of species or duty, but of survival. And trust. Ray didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But one thing was certain, he wasn't leaving her behind. The moment she woke up, her first instinct was rage. Vale's vision was blurry. Her limbs weak, but the burning in her chest was clear. Someone had touched her, moved her, helped her without her permission. And that someone was still there, sitting quietly in the corner of the shelter. Ray the human, her voice came out sharp and dry. Don't touch me again. Ray looked up from the field datapad, his eyes calm. You're awake. That's good. She tried to sit up, but the pain hit her like a weapon. Her body trembled, her hands gripping the cold blanket. She looked down and saw her legs wrapped, splinted, packed with foam. The bones were still broken, but she could feel they weren't bleeding anymore. He had patched her up. She hated that. You should have left me, she hissed, barely able to raise her voice. Ray stood slowly, walked to the small heater near her, and placed a warmed pack of broth beside her. Maybe, but I didn't. Do you know who I am? She said. He nodded. Your Veil rebel commander. Criminal if. I believe what your own people say then. Why are you here? She snapped, trying to play hero. Want to earn a medal for saving the enemy? Ray's voice didn't change. No medals. I'm not even supposed to be here. She glared at him, then go. I don't need you. You do, he said, and his voice was quiet but firm. You're dying. Belle tried to laugh, but it came out as a coughing fit. The taste of iron filled her mouth. She wiped her lips with the back of her hand and looked away. You humans think you can fix everything with bandages and warm food? She muttered. No, Ray said, crouching down beside her. But I can give you a chance, that's all. You didn't respond instead. She stared at the side of the tent, lost in thought. Ray didn't push her. He simply sat back down, giving her space. But inside, Belle's thoughts were spinning like a storm. She had always fought alone. She had challenged generals, escaped assassins, and led rebel cells across 3 systems. But now crippled, trapped. In a human shelter? Under the protection of a man she didn't trust, she felt helpless, and she hated feeling helpless. She looked at the human again. He wasn't armed. Not in a way that threatened her. He wasn't demanding anything. He hadn't even asked questions. No control, no interrogation, no games, just kindness. That's what made it worse. She wanted to believe he was like the others, cruel underneath the surface, hiding some price. He'd demand later, but she couldn't find it. Why are you really here? She asked again, softer this time. Ray looked her in the eyes. Because I heard you, and I couldn't walk away. Vale's throat tightened. She didn't understand this man. He had no reason to help her. He would gain nothing, and yet he stayed. You're a fool, she said. Maybe, Ray replied. She turned her head again. You'll get killed. When my crew comes back, they won't care who you are. They'll shoot first, then I'll shoot back, he said, without hesitation. Vale blinked. For the first time, she noticed something else in his voice. Not just care, but conviction. This man wasn't weak. He wasn't lost. He had chosen her, and he would fight for that choice. She felt her chest ache, but it wasn't from the wounds. It was from something else she hadn't felt in years. Someone believing she mattered. You're wasting your time, she whispered. Ray stood and checked her vitals again, adjusting the scanner wrapped near her chest. If I was, he said, you'd already be dead. She didn't answer. She just closed her eyes and let the warmth of the heater and his quiet presence surround her broken body. For now, she stopped fighting him, but only for now, because Vale still didn't trust anyone, not even the man who refused to let her die. The wind outside was calm now, but the storm inside her hadn't faded. Vale lay still, her eyes open, watching the roof of the shelter as the heater hummed quietly. Ray sat a few steps away, adjusting equipment, pretending not to look at Herb. She knew he was listening. She had been silent for hours, but something inside her was beginning to shift. Maybe it was the warmth. Maybe it was the way he hadn't asked questions. Or maybe it was because she hadn't been this close to death since she was a child in this time. Someone stayed. I was born in chains, she said suddenly. Ray looked up, surprised. He didn't interrupt. My people are nobles. They breed soldiers like cattle. When you are born into a warrior caste, your path is chosen before your eyes open. Fight, obey, win. That's all. Ray listened carefully. My mother was a general, she continued. My father, a warlord. I was trained to kill before I could read. Praise came with blood. Respect came with silence. Questions were not allowed. She paused, her eyes distant. I asked questions anyway. Ray nodded, still quiet. I asked why we burned villages for control. why we enslave species too weak to fight back, why we were told emotion was shameful. I was 10 when they first beat me for speaking out. Her voice didn't crack, but her hand clenched the blanket. They told me I would lead one day, that I would wear armor of gold, command fleets. But I didn't want to rule over ashes. I wanted change. Ray spoke softly. So you rebelled? No, she said, her voice low. Not at first. At first, I tried to change the system from within. I tried diplomacy, reform. I spoke in council halls. I saved prisoners. I gave aid to broken colonies. And I was punished for every act. Her jaw tightened. They labeled me unstable, emotional, weak. My father sent assassins to silence. Me, I killed them with my own hands. Ray's eyes widened, but he still didn't speak. I ran. I found others, aliens, refugees, even some of my own kind who had suffered. I became the face of resistance. The rebellion grew, and when they couldn't kill me, they started hunting everyone I protected. She looked directly at Ray now. They called me dangerous, but I wasn't dangerous because I had power. I was dangerous because I refused to use it the way they did. Ray leaned forward. That's why they left you. Vale nodded slowly. They said it was a crash, but I know better. I wasn't meant to survive. Her voice was quiet now, heavy. Like stone, they didn't just abandon me. They wanted the snow to swallow me. They wanted me to vanish, no body, no funeral, no questions. She turned her face away, and they almost got what they wanted. Ray stood up and stepped closer. He knelt beside her and unzipped a fresh ration pack. You're still here? He said gently, offering it to her. Vale didn't reach for it immediately. You believe everything I just told you? Ray gave a small shrug. Believe your eye, telling the truth as you lived it. And even if none of it was true, I'm still here. She stared at him, searching for a lie. She found none. I don't want your pity, she said. This isn't pity, Ray replied. This is respect. She took the pack from his hand. Her fingers trembled slightly. She hadn't told that story in years, not even to her closest fighters. She didn't talk about the girl who was beaten for asking why. She had buried that girl long ago, but tonight, in this tiny shelter built from scraps and heat packs, she had brought that girl back to life because someone was finally listening, not judging, not fearing, just listening. And in that silence, something dangerous began to grow inside her hope. She looked at Ray again. You're not like the others. Neither are you. For the first time since the crash, she smiled. It was faint, small, tired, but real. The change she was born into hadn't broken her spirit, and now, with her body still shattered, but her heart starting to mend, she realized she might not be alone anymore. Ray had just stepped out to check the signal booster when the air changed. The sky, once silent and cold, now carried a low hum like the growl of something hungry circling in the dark. Shh, he froze. That wasn't wind. That was thruster noise. He ran back inside the tent. Vel sat upright, her face pale. You heard it too, she said. Ray nodded. Ship inbound. Light class fighter. Her expression darkened. It's them. How can you be sure? I know the sound of Ark and Hunter class engines. They're not coming to rescue. They're coming to erase. Ray grabbed his pulse rifle and checked the charge. Vale shifted, wincing as pain shot through her legs.
Ow.
They'll kill you too. Ray didn't move, Ray. I'm not worth dying for. You don't get to decide that, he said. He crouched near the tent's outer flap, peering through a small thermal slit. A shadow moved through the snow, then another. Silhouettes with long armor and glowing visors, weapons raised. 3 of them are Konkan commandos. They weren't looking to ask questions. They were hunting. Ray turned back. They're fanning out. Moving silent, trained for quick kills. Vale struggled to reach her belt where a damaged blaster lay. Ray grabbed it, checked the charge, and placed it in her hand. Can you shoot? My leg's like this? It's probably better than you? She muttered, Good. Cover the left side. I'll hold center. She raised her weapon with shaking arms. I don't have full strength. Then aim for the heart. The tent went quiet. Just breath. Just heartbeat. then dash crack. A flash lit the snow as the first commando fired a stun bolt into the tent's support beam. It sizzled above Ray's head. He returned fire instantly, striking the outline of the attacker. The shape dropped. One down, Ray called. Vale steadied her shaking hands. Her jaw clenched. She wasn't going to die lying down. Another figure darted toward the left. Vale waited, her finger tight on the trigger. She remembered what they had done, how they left her. How they whispered that her name would be forgotten, not today. When the shadow neared, she fired. The shot struck clean through the chest. The commando collapsed in the snow. Smoke rising from the wound. Her hands trembled, but her eyes burned with fire. Inside the tent, the heater's light flickered. Ray kept his back against the wall, listening. The last one was close. Too close. Suddenly, the fabric tore open behind him. The final Arkan soldier lunged through the back of the tent, blade raised. Ray spun just in time, but not fast enough to fire. Vale did. Her shot caught the attacker in the side, making him stagger but not fall. Ray tackled him, knocking the blade away. It rolled across the snow-covered floor, fists flying, bones. Crunching, the commando reached for Ray's throat. Ray gritted his teeth, grabbed the sidearm from his belt, and fired point-blank into the visor. The attacker dropped like a stone. Silence. Turned. Only the sound of wind and blood pounding in there. Ears remained. Ray stood slowly, breathing hard, blood running from a cut across his cheek. He looked around, 3 bodies. No movement. No. More shadows, just the 2 of them alive. He turned toward Vel. She was breathing fast, chest heaving, arms shaking from the effort. "You good?" he asked. She nodded barely. "That was the first time I've fired a weapon from the ground. Still got the job done." Ray stepped over to her, knelt beside her again. She looked up at him not as an alien, not as a rebel, not even as a patient, but as someone who stood her ground. Even broken, she lowered the blaster slowly and let her body relax against the thermal blankets. "Why did you stay?" she asked. Again, Ray looked at her serious now. "Because they wanted you gone. And I don't follow orders that smell like murder." Vale didn't speak. She just stared at the ceiling of the tent again, this time with a different look in her eyes. She had bled for her cause. She had been hunted by her own people. But now, someone stood with her, not because of duty, not because of orders, but because it was right. And for the first time in her life, she didn't feel alone in the fight. The bodies had been dragged outside. Snow covered them quickly, hiding the proof of what happened. But the air still smelled of burned armor and blood. Inside the shelter, Vale leaned back on her elbows, her face pale but focused. She hadn't said a word in almost 20 minutes. Ray was packing fast. He had found a signal node on one of the enemy's belts and was now boosting a direct call to orbit. He didn't trust Arkan channels, but there were other ways. Neutral freighters, smuggler routes, old evac codes still buried in Earth's forgotten systems. "Help will come," said, trying to sound calm. Vale didn't respond. He looked at her. "You'll be safe." She stared at him for a long moment. "Safe where?" "With my people. We have med ships. Reconstruction tech. You'll get your legs repaired." She shook her head slowly. "And after that?" Ray blinked. "Get a second chance? To do what?" she asked. "Live quietly? Hide in a human city while my world keeps killing the innocent?" Ray paused. "You need to survive first." "I didn't come here just to survive," she said. There was strength in her voice now, not anger, not bitterness, but something that hadn't been there before. Purpose, direction. She sat up straighter. "You don't understand what they'll do. Once they learn I lived, they won't stop. They'll call me a traitor who escaped justice. They'll come after anyone who helped me, including you." Ray walked closer, crouching beside her. "I don't care about that. You should care about what's right." Vale looked away, staring at the snow beyond the torn tent flap. "Then you already made your decision," Ray frowned. "What decision?" "To stand beside me." Her words hung heavy in the cold air. He glanced at the communicator. The boosted signal was locked. Help would be here in an hour, maybe less. but she wasn't ready to leave. And suddenly, wasn't sure he was either. You don't want to be taken in? He asked quietly. She shook her head. I want to finish what I started, that rebellion of yours. No, she said, that mission of mine. To show the galaxy that justice can exist even among the broken. I failed before. I was too proud, too alone. Ray's eyes locked with hers. Not anymore, he said. She reached out and took his hand, not weakly, not for comfort, but with clarity. I want to leave with you, she said. Not as a patient, not as a burden, but as a fighter. He stared at her hand in his. A rebel. A wounded woman. A warrior who had every reason to give up, and didn't. You'll need time to heal, he said. Then take me somewhere I can get strong. Ray stood, turned off the beacon signal, and pulled out a different transmitter one from his old soldier days, encrypted and forgotten by most channels. I know one place, he said. No politics, no patrols, just quiet and time. Vale smiled, not a soft smile, but a sharp one. She hadn't smiled like that since she was a commander. He started packing supplies again, this time for travel. When he looked at her again, she was already pulling herself toward the exit flap with her elbows. What are you doing? He asked. I'm not leaving this place on a stretcher, she said. I want my first steps when they come to be my own. I'd placed her arm over his shoulder. Then let's start moving. Together, slowly, they stepped out of the wreckage. The sky above them was clearing. The storm had passed. Only moonlight remained, casting long shadows across the snow, but they didn't look back. The crash site had taken her legs, but it didn't take her fight, and the human who once came just to save a life had just joined a cause. The stars above them where combat war was never far behind. The escape shuttle floated quietly through deep space, silent as a ghost. Ray sat in the cockpit, his eyes scanning the black. Beside him, Vale rested in the recovery seat. Her legs were still wrapped, her body still weak, but her spirit had changed. She wasn't broken anymore, and she wasn't alone. The ship they boarded was old. A civilian courier vessel Ray had stashed away years ago after a mission gone wrong. It wasn't built for comfort or speed, but it was built to disappear. No trackers, no beacons. Just raw, quiet freedom. As Ray checked the course, he looked back at Vale. Her eyes were open, glowing faintly in the dark. You didn't tell me where we're going, she said. He smiled. There's a planet on the edge of neutral space. No governments, no patrols. Just forests, ruins, and peace. That's where I go when I don't want to be found. And how long do you plan to hide? There. I'm not hiding, he replied. I'm building something. Vale raised an eyebrow. A home. Maybe, he said. Or maybe a place where people like you and me don't have to run anymore. She turned her head and stared at him. You don't know what you're getting into, she said. If I stand against, if I fight against, it won't be small. The moment the galaxy hears my name, they'll start hunting you too. I've been hunted before. Not like this. Ray leaned forward, resting his arms on his knees. You think I saved you? But the truth is you gave me a reason again. Vale didn't speak. She didn't need to. Outside the window, the stars stretched endlessly across the void. Somewhere out there, her people were rewriting the story of her death, telling the galaxy she was gone, failure. A shame to her bloodline, but she wasn't gone. She was healing, and when she stood again, the galaxy would feel it. I want to rebuild the rebellion, she said quietly. But this time, smarter, cleaner. Not just war, but ideas. Proof that change can exist without chains. Ray nodded. You'll have help? From one human medic. Ray gave a small grin. From more than one? She narrowed her eyes. What are you hiding? I sent out a message, he said. Encrypted. Old channel. Only a few people could hear it. Vale's heart skipped. Who? People like you. Soldiers who were thrown away. Civilians who saw too much. Exiles who were told they didn't matter. Vale sat up straighter. You didn't just save me, she said slowly. You're building an army. No, Ray said. I'm building a future. Her gaze held his, and then she nodded. For the first time since the crash, she believed in tomorrow. Suddenly the ship's console lit up an incoming signal. Ray leaned forward and opened the message. It was short. Its coordinates and 2 words. We're coming. Bale smiled. They heard you know, Ray said. They heard us. I closed her eyes for a moment, not from pain but from peace. The girl who once stood alone. 4 judges. The woman who had crawled through fire with shattered legs. The warrior who was left to die in the snow now. She had something no one could take, a human ally. A second chance. And a cause worth bleeding for. As their ship entered a new system, stars glowed brighter ahead. Behind them, the galaxy still believed Vale was dead. They were wrong. She wasn't finished. She was just getting started.